So, you need user feedback. While it might be tempting to post your prototypes to LinkedIn and ask which UI is better, that's not going to give you the best insights, especially when the only people who are likely to see your posts are professional colleagues or friends who know a lot about what you do for a living, and likely are not representative of your actual audience. Instead, consider one of these 5 recruiting strategies for your next research project. First, professional recruiters. While this is often the most costly option, since you have to pay for incentives and recruiting fees, professional recruiters often have large pools of respondents, so they can find both general audiences with a good mix of genders, backgrounds, financial status, age, etc., as well as more specialized audiences. They have experience administering and even creating screening surveys to find ideal candidates for even the most specialized studies. So, they can offset a lot of the labor that research teams may dedicate to recruitment. However, you should still be clear with them about your eligibility criteria, and keep in mind that they will need additional time to actually contact and schedule slots with each participant. But overall, the risk of a biased sample will be relatively low, though perhaps limited to local audiences for in-person studies. Number 2, automated recruiting platforms. These platforms are often a bit cheaper, since recruiting fees tend to be a bit lower. But incentives must still be high enough to attract participants. These platforms often have a wide global reach, and since they are automated, they enable researchers to outsource some of the work of scheduling and contacting candidates. However, screening surveys do need to be manually configured and sometimes can be limited in their capabilities. Turnaround time tends to be quicker though, because the screening survey is sent out instantaneously, and the risk of bias can sometimes be low if the pool of respondents is well managed. So this makes them a great option for most studies with more general audiences. Number 3, internal user feedback panels. These are often the cheapest option, since companies can usually compensate participants in the form of discounted or free products or services. And no recruitment fees are necessary, since participants can quickly be found with a quick email blast or 2. However, the scheduling and screening is left entirely up to the researcher, and there's increased risk of bias due to the fact that these folks don't represent other users, like new or disgruntled users. But if you're trying to learn about existing users, power users, or employees, this could be a great, inexpensive way to get participants for your study. Number 4, online forums and groups. The internet is a powerful tool, and online forums or groups often promise publicity and reach at little to no cost. While posting to your own profiles is often unhelpful for the reasons I mentioned before, there can be a lot of opportunity in reaching out to forums or groups with specialized user groups, like people with disabilities, people with specific interests, or people in specific roles or industries. However, researchers have to take on all the work of screening, communicating, and scheduling with participants, making it a relatively high-effort method with some extra turnaround time needed. Risk of bias can also be somewhat high, since vocal group members can sometimes sway popular opinions in the group. But this can be avoided by sourcing participants from multiple groups or forums. Finally, number 5, intercept studies. If you've ever run into a person or pop-up that asked, "Would you like to participate in a 5-minute survey?" then you've probably encountered an invitation to join an intercept study. These studies can be done virtually or in person. However, the reach of these studies is limited to new or existing visitors who have already decided to interact with a company, or task-oriented users who have a specific goal in mind. The cost of these studies tends to be low due to the lack of recruiting fees. However, researcher effort can be very high due to the need to be on call and essentially ready for moderated studies, even if no one has accepted the invitation yet. The bias risk can be moderate due to limiting your audience to current visitors. But if the goal is to understand what a task-oriented user does, or how visitors perceive your product or service, then intercept studies can provide very valuable user feedback. So there you have it. 5 recruiting strategies to find great users for your research. Which method is right for you? Well, there's no one-size-fits-all approach to recruiting participants. Consider your study needs, your budget, and how many researchers you have available. Just because you can't afford a professional recruiter doesn't mean you can't facilitate user research. It just means that the method of recruiting that you choose will have a trade-off. And that's okay. Some data is better than no data. And if you're careful about managing research bias, you'll end up with real data and evidence to help guide you toward a great design.